The X Zone Radio Show is heard on radio broadcast affiliates worldwide, including
AM 580 CFRA in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
WPUL AM 1590 in Daytona Beach, Florida.
KOHI AM 1610 in St. Helens, Oregon.
KHRO AM 1150 in El Paso, Texas. And for more information on becoming a professional broadcast affiliate of the X Zone Radio Show, visit
www.xzbn.net
or call toll-free worldwide
1-800-610-7035.
The X Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, REL-MAR McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
I know you deceived me, now here's a surprise. I know that you have, 'cause there's magic in my eyes. I can see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. Oh yeah. If you think that I don't know about the little tricks you play and never see you when deliberately you put things in my way.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And to listen to any of the past shows that we've done since November of 2009, www.xzonepodcast.com. My guest this hour is Russell TARG. We're going to be talking to Russell about his new book, Do You See What I See? Lasers and Love, ESP and the CIA and the Meaning of Life. Now in paper, Do You See What I See? A droll memoir by a world-class physicist that includes recollections of his involvement with pioneering laser research, encounters with many of the most recognizable literary, cultural, and entertainment figures of the 20th century, and his role in teaching ESP techniques to the CIA. Now, Russell TARG is a Zelig-like character. His story is an idiosyncratic journey through the highways and byways of American intellectual, scientific, and cultural life in the 20th century. Along the way, he rubbed elbows with Anne Ryan, Alan Greenspan, Alan and Arlene Alda, Bobby Fischer, and Sally Rand. He was a pioneer in laser research and spent many years developing airborne laser wind sensors for Lockheed and NASA. In addition, he co-founded the Stanford Research Institute Remote Viewing Program, or viewing program, which was funded by the CIA, and was instrumental in tracking Soviet and Chinese weapon installations during the Cold War. And to round it out, he is legally blind, and he's a motorcyclist who happens to be a Buddhist. In this fascinating memoir by a first-class intellect, the story of a physicist who has pushed the boundaries of science to explore the realms of parapsychology, spirituality, and the unexplained. Joining me this hour is Russell TARG. And Russell, welcome back to the X Zone. Great having you with us, sir.
Well, it's a very nice introduction. It sounds like if you live long enough, you get to do a lot of interesting things.
And meet a lot of interesting people.
Yes. So I grew up in New York where I was doing magic and physics. Then I came to California and started this ESP research program with the CIA, teaching them how to be psychic, and we just went on from there.
Russell, you and I
But
have...
it was the magic that led me to ESP research. When you stand on the stage doing a magic trick, pretending to read minds, a magician will often have information come to him beyond what he should get from the trick that he's doing. And I was recently on the air with Melbourne Christopher and the great Kreskin.
Yes.
And they agreed that although they're not enthusiastic about psychic stuff, that sometimes they can supplement their act with whatever ESP comes their way.
Russell, stand by. We've got to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. Exonation. Russell Targ is our very special guest this hour. www.espresearch.com. We're talking about Russell's new book, Do You See What I See? Lasers and Love, ESP and the CIA, and the Meaning of Life. We'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. Don't go away.
And never see you when deliberately you put things in my way.
Well, I'm so excited because my guest this hour is none other than Russell Targ. We're talking about Russell's new book, Do You See What I See? Lasers and Love, ESP and the CIA and the Meaning of Life. Russell's website is www.espresearch.com. Now, Russell, this is an autobiography after all. Is it possible for you to summarize the main idea you would like to communicate with our listeners about your life story?
Well, that's hard to do. The reason I wrote the book is that I'm a visually handicapped person. I've always had very poor vision, could not read blackboards in school, but I was able to do a lot of interesting things. So that I became a physicist, I went to graduate school at Columbia, and probably because of my bad vision, I got interested in psychic stuff and developed my own ESP ability somewhat and became very skillful at helping other people, more talented than me, learn the psychic ability. So the point of the book is that even though a person might be handicapped in some way, there is still, if he's hardworking and courageous and lucky, he gets to do a lot of interesting things, as long as he keeps moving.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea of this book is that the overall idea that I'm describing in sort of the meaning of life portion is that we are, in our essence, non-local awareness. Our awareness extends past ordinary space and time so that as we quiet our mind, we're able to experience what's happening in the future and what's happening in the distance. And it's not a metaphysical idea. We had a 25-year program at Stanford teaching people how to look into the distance and into the future, and that was supported by many, many U.S. governmental agencies during the Cold War. And because of our success, the government of the U.S. set up a remote, set up a remote viewing organization at Fort Meade in Maryland, and we had a whole psychic Army Corps. Now, we were not staring at goats. That amusing film, but it gives you the wrong idea of what we were doing. But we did set up a psychic corps on the East Coast of the U.S., in which quite a number of Army intelligence people became very proficient at quieting their mind and describing things that are happening in the far distance. So the purpose of writing this book is to encourage people to get in touch with the psychic side of themselves. It's not hard to do. You don't have to spend a lot of money for classes. You don't have to give away your mind or eat porridge at the feet of your guru. It's an ability we all have. And I guess the purpose of the book is to give people permission to make use of their own psychic abilities.
Russell, is it possible when you're doing remote viewing and doing ESP to actually pass the 3 dimensions that we're attuned to and actually go into further dimensions? And a lot of people now believe, especially with quantum physics, that we have as many as 11 dimensions. So is it possible to pass the 3 that we have and get information from the 11th, for example?
Well, the other dimensions that I think we have come from sort of ordinary physics and not quantum physics. The earliest pioneers like Schrödinger and Minkowski, who taught Einstein, felt that we have a familiar 3 dimensions we all know about, and the time dimension, and the idea that each of those dimensions may have a real part and an imaginary part, so that there are 4 real dimensions. You and I are separated by 5,000 kilometers, and we're talking to each other in real time. So
Yes.
The only distance between us is 5,000 kilometers in the real plane. But there will be a place through the complex space-time, which physicists today call non-local space-time, that allow us to be connected with one another. So if I held up an interesting object here and asked you to quiet your mind, maybe not while you have a mic in one hand, you could describe my object with no trouble. And it's as though through the complex space-time, there's no separation between us. The Buddhists have said for 2,500 years that separation is an illusion. So it's not like we're creating additional dimensions. I'm not pulling you into the so-called 4th dimension. But physicists agree now that we live in a non-local space-time. And that a non-local space-time means that phenomena that occur in seemingly distant places are not so far apart. But it does not pertain to the 11 dimensions of string theory. So that's a conjecture and is not known to be true. The fact that psychic abilities are independent of space and time is known to be true. The ESP researchers don't know a lot about how ESP works, but we are all absolutely convinced that psychic functioning is independent of space and relatively independent of time. And I'll just say it again, it's no harder to describe something that's going on 5,000 kilometers away than it is to describe what's going on across the street. That spatial distance does not interfere with your ability, and looking a few days in the future is just as easy as describing something contemporaneous. For example, one of our most famous exploits at Stanford was describing changes in the silver commodity market. And we did that 9 weeks in a row. Every Monday, a psychic would try and describe what we would hand him the following Friday, 5 days in the future. And the object we would hand him was keyed or associated with whether the market would go up or down, up a little or up a lot. And he was correct 9 times in a row, and we made $120,000 back in 1982 when $120,000 was a lot of money. So the fact that we were looking 5 days in the future in no way interfered with this fellow's ability to describe on Monday what we'd hand him Friday.
Is the U.S. government and other governments of the world still using remote viewing and ESP as a way of gathering intelligence?
I certainly hope so, but I have no knowledge that they're doing that. Our program at Stanford ended in 1995 when Robert Gates, who's now Secretary of Defense, at that time he was head of the CIA, Gates closed down our program in 95, saying that America no longer had any enemies, so we no longer needed a psychic corps, because we ordinary CIA could deal with the problems. That was 95. And of course, we went about a decade before we had to deal with Osama bin Laden.
That's right.
But there might be a secret psychic corps in the basement of the Pentagon that I don't know about. For example, I know that the CIA approached some of our best remote viewers on a freelance basis to do things for them. My experience is that it doesn't work so well, because although remote viewing seems transparently easy, to actually do an operational task requires some skill, both from the interviewer and, of course, from the viewer. So I hope that they're still doing it in the basement of the Pentagon, but so far as I know, the government does not have any psychic program at the present time.
Russell, with Osama bin Laden still being at large, and with someone with your abilities and the other researchers that you worked with in the past when you were doing work with the CIA and other governmental agencies, why wouldn't they call you up and say, Russell, we would like you to come and help us find Osama bin Laden?
It would be a good idea.
Yeah.
We were supported by an unusual cadre of very courageous, successful, intelligent people in Defense Intelligence Agency, in the CIA, in Air Force intelligence. So we had a collection of head of the agency-sized people who were very smart and open-minded. Mm-hmm. But there are always people who are principally religious fanatics, fundamentalists, who hate ESP and are afraid that psychic abilities are from the devil. And there are people like that still in Congress. So our government agency, the CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency, were teased by other people for supporting us. The fact that we continue to bring in valuable information is what kept our program going for 23 years. And let me tell you, the most unlikely paranormal thing in our program is that we kept going for 23 years. That is probably the longest running program in the history of the government. I'm going to try and find out if that's true. It's very, very hard to get follow-on money. For example, when I was at Lockheed, we were building laser systems to prevent airplane crashes, and that worked very well. We had a 2-year program. I wanted another year to do a demonstration of ability, and we spent a huge amount of trouble trying to get a 1-year follow-on, whereas in the psychic program, we had 23 years of continuous funding.
Russell, stand by.
So
We've got to take a
commercial.
We've got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back with the news. X-Zone Nation, Russell TARG's our very special guest. Always a great honor to have Russell with us here in the X-Zone. His new book, Do You See What I See? Lasers and Love, ESP and the CIA and the Meaning of Life. His website, www.espresearch.com. We'll be back after the news. Don't go away. You're listening to the X-Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio,
Euro High Definition Radio,
and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035.
Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com.
On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com,
And our website,
www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Love was glass that broke apart. Give me faith.
Martin Luther in the game of life. Andy Kaufman in the wrestling match. Monopoly 21, checkers and chess. Mr. Fred Lassie in a breakfast mess. Let's play Twister, let's play Risk.
X-Zone Russell Targ is our special guest this hour. It's always great having Russell here with us in the X-Zone. His new book that came out in March of this year, Do You See What I See? Lasers and Love, ESP and the CIA, and the Meaning of Life. His website is www.espresearch.com. Russell, someone was telling me that you have an ESP teaching, what are they called for the iPhone? An app.
You could call it a teaching machine. Our first program to show people how to be psychic was a gadget that I had made in the 1970s to help people develop their ESP. When there's a time when teaching machines were all the rage in the schools, and I brought this to a NASA conference on speculative technology. This is a electronic device that allows you to choose one of 4 colored pictures that are in front of you. You touch one, and hopefully you touch the one that's going to ring a bell, show you a picture, vibrate in your hand, and give you feedback, and you learn that was correct. So I brought this machine to a NASA conference where I met Werner von Braun and Arthur C. Clarke and a bunch of NASA notaries, notable people. And they gave us our first money at SRI in 1972 because von Braun did excellently with the ESP teaching machine. And we had a program at Stanford for a year where we worked with 150 people and found that many of them were able to get in touch with the part of themselves that's psychic, improve their ESP, and it's a year-long program with this ESP device. And I'm now a Apple enthusiast. I love my iPhone. So I wrote a ESP game, an application for the iPhone, which is free. And this is called ESP Trainer, a free download from the application store from iTunes. And you can have this NASA-developed ESP game on your iPhone at no cost. And people are now writing to me about very high scores. A single run with this game is a run of 24, and because there are four buttons to push, you would expect people to get 6, and many people are getting 12 or 14, with astronomical high scores. And that interests me, so I'm in touch with all these high-scoring people, and it's a free application that lets you get in touch with your psychic abilities and improve it.
Russell,
So
why do you...
the name is ESP Trainer.
Russell, why do you think people are getting such high scores these days?
Well, that greatly interests me. I think that I have 7,500 downloads, so I have a big pool of people who are playing with this. And I think some of them are sitting home quietly, simply. The trick is, with this game, you just learn what nobody's watching you, the sort of thing you do in the privacy of your own home, and you can learn what it feels like when you press the button that's going to ring the bell and show you a picture. It's just quiet. You're sitting looking at your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You see 4 colored squares in front of you, and you just learn what it feels like that I'm going to press that green square, and I'm confident it's going to ring the bell, and it does. So you learn what it feels like when you have a psychic hunch. For example, if you're driving down the highway and you suddenly get a feeling that I should change lanes, you may have this feeling often, but sometimes you change lanes and avoid an accident. We had a contract monitor from the CIA who had flown on thousands of airplane trips, but one day he was flying out of Detroit with his partner, and he had a very frightening dream of a horrific airplane crash with him in it. But it was so realistic that even though he had flown many, many times, he decided to follow his intuition. He didn't want to seem like a sissy, of course, so he told his partner something came up. He drove his partner to the airport, and as he drove away, he got to see the airplane crash without him on it. So it's as though his experience of the crash the following day stimulated him at an earlier time to have a dream. It's a way that the future can affect the past.
So,
and in fact, many people have their very first psychic experiences in terms of a precognitive dream. Precognitive dreams are very common, and you can learn to separate them from ordinary dreams of wish fulfillment and anxiety.
how does a person separate that? Because I was just going to ask you. How does a person?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yeah, it's uncanny. It's truly uncanny. So how does a person actually tell the difference between a precognitive dream and a wishful dream?
Well, the ordinary dreams we have are dreams filled with the residue of the previous day.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you cross the lake at a hydrofoil boat and it shakes you up and you dream about being on a boat, you know that's from yesterday's trip. Or if you have a examination coming up and you have a dream about failing an exam and you didn't study for it, we would not consider that precognitive. So there's dreams with residue of the previous days, anxiety dreams, or wish fulfillment dreams. If you have a girlfriend that you've always wanted to be with, you dream about her, doesn't mean she's going to show up.
Right.
On the other hand, so those are 3 common kinds of dreams: anxiety, wish fulfillment, and the previous day's residue. On the other hand, if you have a dream containing material that seems utterly unfamiliar, for example, you dream about walking out your front door for the newspaper and there's an elephant walking down your street, and you've never seen an elephant in front of your house before, and then the next day you go out for your paper and there's an elephant there. So I would say the next day the elephant was the cause of your dream the previous night. So one way you can tell that the dream is precognitive is if the dream contains material that's bizarre and unfamiliar to you, not part of your normal repertoire of things that you would think about or dream about. Also, dreams that tend to be unusually, preternaturally clear or bright or vivid tend to be precognitive. And the way to tell which dreams are precognitive is to start writing them down. Carl Jung wrote about this in his very nice books, Dreams, Memories, and Reflections. And what he said, if you want to get in touch with your dream life, you should have a little notebook by your bed. And before you get up in the morning, before you move, write down the dreams that you've had, especially the dreams you had on awakening, and you'll be able to tell the dreams that are just bubbling up from your subconscious and the dreams that are brought to you by the future. And you can learn to incorporate it. I mean, that's useful information. And creating a little dream diary is quite a helpful thing to do to learn about who you are and what's waiting for you in the future.
Now, we've had many psychics on this show, Russell, and there are psychics who claim to be psychics that I don't think are more psychic than one of my two Shih Tzus. Then you come across the psychics who you take a look at their predictions and you say, okay, based on the world events of today, this is what I would consider to be an educated guess. I have yet, Russell, to have a psychic on the show that blows me away. I've had psychics come on the show who are so self-confident that they actually send me 2 months ahead of time what is going to happen. Nothing happens. Then I ask the question, well, if psychic ability is real, how come psychics don't predict world events? For example, none of the psychics that we've had on the show have, were able to predict the earthquake in Chile, the earthquake in Jamaica or Haiti. I mean, the oil disaster in the Gulf. So, what would one do to validate psychic ability compared to bad showmanship?
I think that's a good question, and in a way, that's what I was talking about when you said, "Why doesn't the government do ESP experiments?"
Okay,
and the problem is, forecasting world events invites the psychic, quiet your mind, look out in the world, and tell me what's new. Well, that's really not a question. A psychic that is asking the psychic what's new or what's going to happen that's exciting is sort of not a well-defined question. If you ask a psychic, tell me about the picture that will appear on tomorrow's New York Times front page, that's something he can sort of bite into. The front page of the Times is not yet composed. No living person knows what's going to be on that front page picture, but that would be a reasonable task for a psychic. Tell me about the picture that I'm going to show you on the front page of the New York Times. And we've done many, many experiments like that. Or I could ask my psychic, as we did in the silver forecasting,
right.
Here we are on Monday morning. Joe down at Montgomery Street has 4 objects sitting on his desk. I don't know what they are, but he will give you one of them next Friday, 5 days from now, depending on the silver market. Tell me about the object that I'm going to put in your hand on Friday. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What's the texture? Now, that's a perfectly good precognition because it's determined by changes in the silver market. Nobody knows that. But it gives him something concrete upon which to focus his mind. So and we've had very good success with that kind of thing. We did an experiment with the CIA with Ingo Swann, great New York psychic, where they said, here's some geographical coordinates. We want to know what's going to happen there on Friday, and here we are on Tuesday. I'd like you to please look 3 days in advance and describe what's going to happen at these coordinates. And he said, well, I see a group of trucks in the background, and there's some kind of beautiful pyrotechnic display going on. Big hemispherical colored display. Get me my colored pencils. And he drew this beautiful hemisphere. It looked like a great fireworks display. 3 days later, the Chinese at that place did a atomic bomb test which failed. And what the CIA got to see at that time was what the effects of burning uranium in the air, which is a pyrotechnic display rather than a mushroom cloud. So Swann was able to describe this extremely unlikely event 3 days in the future, but working with an interviewer who was able to focus his attention on the point in space-time, 3 days in the future at these coordinates, what do you see? That's a much more doable task than look out in the planet and tell me what's exciting that's going to happen at some unknown place at some unknown time. Because in a way, the short answer to your question, there are no signposts along the timeline. as you look along the timeline, there's no post that says, this is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday. So a guy may look out and say, oh my God, I see a building that's going to be hit.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not able to read the street signs, and he can't see the timeline. So saying a building is going to be on fire someplace, sometime in the future is not useful information. So ESP is very useful at finding things if you know what you're looking for and know what time to... If you could give him the coordinates, that's really the answer. We live in this large non-local space-time.
Right.
And I'm at here and now with you, and you say, I'd like you to look tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the evening at these coordinates at the base of the CN Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's going to be at the base of the CN Tower tomorrow at 10? A psychic would have no problem doing that. But a psychic has a hard time answering the question, what's new?
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It sure does. Russell, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. X-Zone Nation, Russell TARG is my special guest this hour. Always great having Russell here with us in the X-Zone. His website is www.espresearch.com. His new book, Do You See What I See? Lasers and Love, ESP and the CIA, and the Meaning of Life. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable. Don't go away.
Yeah. Mr. Fred Lassie in a breakfast mess. Yeah. Let's play Twister. It's a beautiful morning. I think I'll go outside for a while and just smile. Just taking some clean, fresh air. No sense in staying inside if the weather's fine and you got...
X-Zone Nation, Russell TARG is our special guest. It's always a great pleasure having Russell here with us in the X-Zone. His website is www.espresearch.com. One quick question, Russell, to finish off what you and I were talking about in the last segment. When somebody goes to a psychic, whether it's in a psychic fair or in one of these storefront psychic shops, how accurate at the very most can this psychic be if the person just walks in off the street, says, how's my love life going to be? Am I going to find Mr. Right? Am I going to get the job I've been looking for?
They can be very accurate. Depends on how open you are and how good a psychic they are. The main thing in going to a psychic on the street or at the fair is don't tell them anything. An experienced psychic doesn't want to know anything. They don't want to know your name or where you're from or if you're married or almost what your question is, because everything you tell the psychic provides mental noise, analytical information.
Right.
And analytical information is the enemy of ESP. So if I come in and say, I'm a 70-year-old physicist from California, married for so many years, and I would like to know such and such, well, I have just so front-loaded them, as we would say in the Army program, that I've just created so much noise it would be almost impossible for them to do anything for me psychically, because I've built up such a big mental picture out of analytical information that it would overcome their psychic abilities. So an experienced psychic will immediately say, don't tell me anything. Everything you say makes it harder. But an experienced psychic can indeed give you prodigious amounts of information.
So if a person goes to a psychic at a psychic fair where there's 15, 20 different psychics, people milling around, I don't, based on what you just said and based on my own personal observations, I don't think it's possible for a psychic at a psychic fair to give an accurate reading based on all the chatter that they must be experiencing in their minds.
Well, I had a friend who visited a psychic fair, and the psychic said, "I don't normally do this, but do you have a friend who died recently?" And my friend said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I see a young woman with long dark hair, wearing pearls, standing right behind you, and she has a message for you." And that was my daughter Elizabeth.
Oh my gosh.
So this psychic at a fair gave a surprisingly good rundown on my daughter, who at that time had been deceased a couple of years. And my daughter just popped up behind my friend, who was very close to my daughter. So you sometimes get, and this was unasked for. My friend wasn't looking for information about
Right.
Elizabeth, just popped up. So sometimes a psychic at a fair will just get a really clear picture and be able to provide information, though it's a poor environment. It's a psychically very noisy environment.
Russell, we've just run out of time for tonight. As always, time goes by fast when you're with us. I would like to get you back in the future, Russell, and talk to you more about psychic phenomena, ESP, and the great work that you've done in the past. So until then, Russell, I want to thank you very much for joining us. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about Russell, his website is www.espresearch.com. That's www.espresearch.com. Russell Targ, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Take care, my friend. Speak to you soon. Exonation, when we come back on the other side of this break at 6.5 minutes past, more from the X-Zone as we continue our investigation into the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.